So with that being said, we will go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be covering a number of things about how to get up and running with ProWritingAid, and I will turn this over to our founder and CEO, Chris Banks, in just a second. But we'll be covering today how to upload your document, how to use our real-time checker, how to run a summary report, looking into some of our individual reports, and then go through some other helpful features and integrations. So with all of that being said, Chris, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Hayley, and welcome everyone. It's really nice to see so many people here from all over the world. I myself am in Spain at the moment. It's just started raining. Typical.
You look like you're in the rainforest, yes.
Yeah. It's quite humid at the moment. I think there's just about to be a storm to break the heat. So let me share my screen. I'm going to talk you through ProWritingAid, as Hayley said, and as she mentioned, if you have any questions, then just pop them in the Q&A. We've got time at the end where we will try and answer as many of those as we can. We'll also do a little poll partway through to see which parts of the program people would like us to focus on, so that we can make sure that you get the most from this session. So here I go, sharing my screen. So this is our online web editor. I'm going to use this for most of the demonstration just because it's where a lot of people work. Obviously, it means you can use any computer, you can just log into the website, you can save all your documents in there if you want, and then you can edit. We also have integrations for lots of common editing environments. So for instance, Google Docs, Microsoft Office. We also have a desktop app that allows you to work with things like Scrivener and Final Draft. We've got extensions for all of the major browsers. That means that wherever you're writing online, you can also use ProWritingAid. We try and integrate to as many different places as people write. And obviously there's thousands, but we try and integrate when we can. And our desktop app opens lots of different file formats for the occasions where we can't. And another thing we try and do is we try and keep the look and feel of the application similar wherever you're using it. So whether you're using it in Microsoft Office or in the web editor or Google Docs, we try and keep it looking similar so that if you're using it in different places, you'll be familiar and you only have to learn one user interface. The web editor is where a lot of people start, and obviously for a lot of people, the first thing that they want to do is get a document into the web editor. So if you've got something you've written already and you want to improve it, get it in there. For a lot of people think, okay, the easiest thing is for me to just copy and paste it. Actually, we would generally recommend you not to do that. And the reason is just if you have any formatting in your text, you're pasting into a browser and then you'll have to copy it out again, and that's never going to happen perfectly. So you might end up having to redo some of your formatting. In some tools, that's the only way that you can do it. With ProWritingAid, we've come up with a better way, which is uploading your document. And what happens when you upload your document is we store a copy of your existing document, and then when you download it again after you've made all your changes, we just apply those changes to the original document so that it maintains all of your formatting, or for instance, if you had footnotes or anything else within the document, that will all remain there. So you can see here there's an upload your document. Again, in this menu up in the top left, you can see there's an upload here. Either one of those will get you to the right place. So I will just go to my desktop and choose a sample document. So I've uploaded my document. I can make my changes now, and when I want to get it back, then I just click on this export from the menu. So you can see immediately my document has become full of underlines. We've got blue underlines, we've got yellow underlines, we've got red underlines here. Blue are for grammar issues, red are for spelling issues, and yellow is for style issues. So these style issues are the typical things that a professional copy editor might correct in your writing. So for instance, a personal niggle of mine is I always write starts to do something or begins to do something. which can usually be just shortened to the verb itself. So that's why we have that rule, because I always make that mistake. And if you ever see a suggestion and you want to learn a bit more about it, then there's this orange button in the top right hand corner, which takes you to a little pop-up. And this is key, I think, because often you might not understand exactly why we're suggesting something. You might want to learn a bit more about it. You can come into this pop-up, you have a brief explanation of it. You often have a video as well, which really explains it. And then if you want to click on to read more, then you can read the full article on our blog. And what we're always trying to do is to help you learn as you're writing. So the tool is designed as a kind of learning, doing feedback loop. I think the thing about writing is it's very difficult to improve as a writer just by reading books about writing, because it's very abstract. You know, to improve as a writer, you have to actually be writing and getting feedback on your own writing. And then you start to see the things that you're doing and how you can improve them. And then as you do go through iterations of that, you'll gradually begin to improve. And obviously having detailed explanations of the suggestions helps you with that process. Of course, you don't have to accept them, and there's on every suggestion you'll see there's this ignore, and that will just say, I don't care about this, just ignore it. If it's something that you really dislike, then you can disable the rule, which means that you'll never see that type of suggestion ever again. Or of course, you can just accept it by clicking here. So those are the kind of the basic suggestions, which allow you to very quickly check just for grammar, style, and spelling. If you want to go into more depth, then you can, using these details on the left-hand side. So we actually have the improvements here as well. So some people really like to go through all of the improvements just as a list here. So you can go through and you can, for instance, accept them here. In the same way as you could just hover over here. We like to give people both options because people like to see both options. But also we have these goals. And so the idea behind goals is that they give you the steps that you need to take to improve your document. So what we try and do is we benchmark your text against good examples of published writing within your genre. And you can actually here choose the type of document that you're writing, and that will change the goals and the stats. So for instance, if you're writing a business document, you might be writing a sales email or a job description or some kind of marketing text. You can set that and the goals will change depending on what type of a document it is. We also have a broad selection of creative writing types. So if you're writing children's, YA, fantasy, historical fiction, then you can set the specific document type that you're writing, and it will then change the target range based on that genre. So what we've done is we've taken examples of really great writing within those genres, and then we've analyzed all of that data, and we've then turned that into a target area. So for instance, you'll see things like, you know, romance novelists tend to write shorter sentences than, for instance, like a business writer. So if you're writing a romance novel, you want to have a lower target for your average sentence length than if you're writing a business book, for instance. And again, all of that is kind of explained within the text. So I think this sample text is kind of historical fiction, so I'll set that. And you can see it recalculates all of my goals. Again, if you're not sure about a goal, you can click on this orange icon and you'll get a nice explanation here, and you'll see some interesting facts. So for instance, this shows you, I think this, if I go to the full article, I can see that it shows me for different genres what the average sentence length is. So as I said, like in romance here, it's got short sentence length. Popular science, business have got longer sentence lengths. So again, all of these different goals have got explanations. So as you're going through it, you'll learn about exactly why we suggest that you target that. And
just
you could
quickly,
run. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I was just going to say, just quickly, I find this personally so helpful because I think a lot of times when we're writing, we think a lot about conventions in our genre, you know, in terms of how we outline or plot or the different points. And we don't think as much about conventions around language and how we're actually kind of doing the mechanics of writing. And so this is really helpful because it's one thing to have, you know, all the plot points that you should have in your fantasy novel, but if it's not written in a way that fantasy readers can access, then it doesn't matter if you have all those great plot points because nobody's going to be able to engage with it. And so again, having these goals that are customized for each of those different genres or subgenres really helps ensure, again, not only that you have the right points, but that they're written in the way that makes sense or the way that readers of that genre expect.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what we're trying to do with all of the tool is we're trying to show you how your writing will be perceived by your target audience. So as Haley was saying, right, different readers within different genres have different expectations of what they're going to read, and they have different tastes. So we're trying to help you to cater to those tastes. And I always think, you know, writing things down is only one part of the process. Actually, the most important part is the transfer from the page into your reader's mind. And that is never going to be a perfect representation, right? It's never going to be perceived by your reader in exactly the same way that you want it to. But by helping them to read something that meets their expectations, it will smooth that transfer of knowledge and of ideas and of your story. So yeah, so generally speaking, I think this is quite a reasonable piece of writing. So there's not that much orange, but you can go through and then identify the goals that are in orange. If it's green, then that means it's great. So obviously there's quite a few grammar mistakes that we put into this piece, but if I were to fix all of those, then my grammar score would go up. And then I could look at something like the glue index. I think we'll look at that a bit later. The glue index and sticky sentences is one of my favorite reports. I think, again, that's one of the things we're also trying to do is we're trying to help you get the most from your time. So whatever you're writing, you've only got a certain amount of time that you can spend on improving it. So what we try to do is point you at the pieces of your writing that will benefit the most from improvement. So for instance, particular sentences that look like they need the most work, particular paragraphs that have difficulties with readability, and then also the specific issues that we're identifying with these goals. So the main aim of the software is that you create a better document in as short a time as possible.
Before you move on, oops,
yeah.
sorry. I was just going to say, a couple of people have asked if you could show them again where they go to set their genre on this panel.
Yes. Yeah, so it's just here at the top. So you can set it, or you can also go to the settings tab here, and you can choose your genre from this list here. And there's also settings for your language. Obviously, I write in British English, but we have US, Australian, Canadian as well. And then general, which is a sort of very permissive English that allows both US and British spelling. And then there's various kind of advanced settings that you can access through this settings tab. And then you go back to the reports. So the idea of the tool is we give you all of these goals. Each goal here, roughly speaking, corresponds to one of these reports above. And so the idea is that when you see a goal that is orange, then you can dig into that by looking at the specific report. So for instance, the glue index is linked to the sticky sentences report, but actually you can just click on this link here and it will run it automatically for you. So if I click on the glue index, then it runs the sticky sentences check for me, and then it highlights my sticky sentences and I can go into it. But we'll show you the sticky sentences later on. Another really good place to start as well is our summary report. So this gives you, and I think a lot of people actually like to print out their summary report and study it a little bit, because it gives you kind of a plan of attack for your writing. So when I run it, what it's doing is it's analyzing my text and it's running all of the key reports. Again, it shows me the goals here. So the ones that I've achieved and the ones that I haven't. So where my document looks great and where it might need some work. And then it gives me a section for each of these goals. So for instance, here's the grammar check. It lists all of my grammar mistakes, the writing style check. And so there's a section for each, but also one of the nice things is, again, we benchmark you against good examples of writing. So once you've selected your genre, so I've set it to historical fiction, then it will show me how I compare. So this is emotion tells. So emotion tells are for creative writing when you tell the reader that your character is experiencing emotion, saying like he was really angry, instead of showing his face going red and clasping his teeth. It's better to show your reader through the actions and description of your characters rather than just handing them on a plate the fact that he was angry. So you can see here how you compare to your genre in general, so for historical fiction. And then what you can also do is you can choose your favorite author. So this is a feature just for premium users, but we have a long list of authors that you can choose from the settings. And so you can see exactly how you compare to your favorite author. And that will happen. So for instance, here, this is my adverb usage. So you can see actually in this document, there's a bit of a problem with adverbs. Use it over twice as much as the average for historical fiction. And you can see actually, interestingly, because Stephen King is a bit of an adverb hater, he actually uses it slightly more than the average for historical fiction. And you'll see that kind of break down across a lot of the different goals. And you can see a lot of data in here that is really revealing about your document, and you'll learn a lot. So for instance, here we're showing you the lengths of all of your sentences, which is a completely different way of thinking about your writing. And you can often spot issues in your writing. So for instance, with the sentence length check, there's two things I like to look for, one of which is lots of long sentences that are really close together, because I think that indicates an area of the text which can be really hard to read. You think the longer your sentence is, as your reader's reading a sentence, they have to keep more and more things in their mind. So it's harder and harder for them to process a long sentence, which is, the occasional long sentence is absolutely fine, and sometimes they're needed. But if you put 3 or 4 or 5 long sentences in a row, then it can lead to kind of mental exhaustion from your reader because they've overworked their short-term memory in that paragraph. So I look for lots of long sentences, and then I also look for lots of sentences in a block that are of a similar length. And the reason I do that is because that creates a kind of monotony for the reader, right? It's like, if every sentence is the same length, and often you see every sentence has got the same structure as well, it creates kind of boringness in your writing. So I'll look for sections like that and then try and go in and add a little bit more variety into that section of the text. And there's a sentence length check, which shows you all of these lengths, and you can click on them and it'll take you to exactly the sentence that you've clicked on. So you can go to that part of the text and start editing. So yeah, there's quite a lot of detail in here, and I think that's why people really like to print it out and have a look at it. So again, you can see, for instance, here is a distribution of all of our sentence lengths. So you can see actually we have fewer short sentences and more kind of mid-length sentences than your average historical fiction. And Stephen King is actually quite close to the average for historical fiction, even though that's not his genre. But you can get some really interesting insights from this into why your writing might not quite be at the level that you want it to be. And it can really reveal things that you didn't know about writing. And for me, that's one of the interesting things about writing, is that it's very hard to see the skills that you need to practice to improve as a writer. I think, if you look at a sport, for instance, it's very easy to see that, like in tennis, you have like your forehand and your backhand and your serve and your volley, and you can practice those individual skills. They're very evident, right? Whereas with writing, there's those skills that are much harder to see. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to show you the things that really good writers are doing that make their writing better. So for instance, using sentence lengths, using sentence variety to engage the reader and create excitement, tension, and changes of mood within the writing. And again, wherever you are, there's always help at hand, so you can click on the little help icon and it will explain exactly what it all means. So it can be a little bit overwhelming at first, but you can start just with the real-time checking and the goals, and as you get more confidence, you can go deeper and deeper and deeper, right? I think that's the thing about writing is, nobody is a perfect writer. Everybody, even professional writers, have copy editors, they have beta readers, they're getting feedback on their writing all of the time, and they're improving. I was listening to an interview with one of the best-selling fantasy novelists the other day, and he was saying, like he's on his third book now. He's like, I am just such a better writer now than I was when I started my first book. And that's incredible, right? Because his first two books have been incredible bestsellers, and he's saying that he's learned so much since then. So I don't think you should be afraid of practicing and putting your work out there, and you will only get better. And that's why we're here to help. So yeah, so that's the summary report, and we shall go back now to the real-time editor. So the real-time editor you can turn off and on using this button here. So if you're just writing, some people really like to turn it off so they don't have any distractions as they're writing. You can just turn it back on again and it will appear, and you'll get your goals and your improvements here. So, Hayley, do you want to do that little quiz to see which reports people are interested in seeing?
Yes. Yep. So I'm going to launch a poll, and you can see either you can answer the question asks, what's your favorite ProWritingAid report? So you can answer that. But also, if you have not used ProWritingAid before, you can pick which one you would like to learn about. So I'm going to launch it now, and I'll leave it open for about a minute. And yeah, just as we're waiting for people to vote, I think ProWritingAid has made me such a better writer for exactly what you're talking about, Chris, like that instant feedback of, I have the same bad habit of saying like begins to repeat or starts to do or something like that. And so it's really helped me fix a lot of those errors. And now I catch myself doing them before the software even tells me that I've done it. And also I think it's great to get more information, because I find a lot of times I did not know that was a bad habit of mine until ProWritingAid started to call it out. I also didn't realize how much I repeat myself or how many times I'll use the same word within a document until I started using ProWritingAid. And so sometimes, you know, we look for your basic spelling and grammar errors, but there are so many other bad habits or other things that you can improve that you wouldn't see if you didn't have, you know, ProWritingAid telling you, hello, stop using the word turquoise to describe to describe this character's eyes over and over and over again. It's quite boring. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll in about 10 seconds. We've got just a dead heat between a couple things.
Yeah, it's difficult to tell.
Okay, let's end now. So we've had a bunch of people voted for the grammar report, as well as the sticky sentence report, and then readability and style were close in third and fourth place.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll start with the grammar report. It's actually fairly similar to the real-time report, so we should be able to cover that pretty quickly, and then I'll move on to the sticky sentences and readability. And I might take a look at the repeats because you mentioned that, and I think it's quite useful. And the thesaurus as well, because that's, I think for me, one of my favorites and kind of an undiscovered gem of the ProWritingAid reports. So close this poll. So if I go to the grammar report here, so whereas real time is real time and updates as you're typing, the majority of these reports, you just run them and then as you edit, it doesn't update. The idea being that some people really like the real-time updating, and other people prefer just to have the suggestions that they have and just to go through and fix those without added distraction of things updating in real time. So there is actually very little difference between the grammar report and the suggestions that you get in the real-time checking. You can see the same things are underlined, the same suggestions. I have the same ability to ignore them, disable them that I had previously. So I can just go through and accept all of those. So that's actually very, very simple and very similar to the real-time checking. Again, you know, if you need extra help, then you can click on this icon and it will explain it to you. I think for me, one of the great things is the extra information that you get on our blog. So our team have spent a lot of time creating thousands and thousands of articles and videos and other useful information to help you with the tool, to help build up your skills, you know, not just in grammar, but also in writing in general. So you can see down here, there's a really broad set of categories of topics. And for each of those, you'll find a series of articles on the subject. And you can see, if you go to the grammar guide here, for instance, you can see all of those different topics in different categories. So for instance, you know, I think a lot of people struggle with commas, and you can come in here and you can see an article that tells you, you know, all of the things that you need to know about when to use commas, and you can go through individual articles about each of those and learn. So there's an awful lot of learning resources built into the tool, and the idea being that we, you know, then when you need that feedback, when you need to learn why we're suggesting to add a comma or remove a comma, then you'll get an article that explains exactly why in that scenario a comma is not necessary or a comma is needed. And then the idea is that instead of having to memorize 19 different reasons why you should have a comma in certain places and then remember to apply that to your writing, you can see when you haven't used a comma exactly the single reason that you should have done in that case, and you're more likely to learn it from that doing and learning feedback cycle. So that is the grammar report in a nutshell. It's very, very simple. The readability report here, again, is, I think, as I said, is aimed at showing you the areas of your writing that would benefit from the most improvement. So unfortunately, this isn't a great example, but what it does is it runs on every single paragraph and it gives you a readability score. So the idea being that we then show you the least readable paragraphs in your document. And they will be highlighted either in red, which are very unreadable ones, or yellow, which are slightly unreadable ones. And then you can go into those specific paragraphs and edit them. So for me, I think readability, but when we calculate readability, it's basically a factor of two things, which is the lengths of your sentences and the lengths of your words measured by the number of syllables in those words. So if you want to improve the readability of your text, you need to either reduce the length of your sentences or reduce the length of the words that you're using in those sentences, or a mixture of both of those two things. I think often people end up really writing very, very long sentences that could easily be cut down and improved. So the idea here is that by pointing at the least readable paragraphs within your text, we're pointing you at the areas that will benefit the most from your attention and saving you time, because you can just focus on those particular paragraphs. I think the sticky sentences report as well is a very similar concept, but it's doing that at the sentence level. So for those of you that don't know what a sticky sentence is, a sticky sentence is one that has a high number of glue words. So glue words are the kind of most common words in English. They're the words that tend to have no meaning, but are just there to stick together the words in the sentence. So they're kind of the meaning words, the ones I call the meat and potato words. So you can see in this suggestion, it's showing me this is a sticky sentence. It's saying 63% of the words are glue words, and then it lists those words as can, how, must, be, to, get in and out of, at, a. You can see by reading those words that you actually have no idea what the sentence is about. So they really have very little meaning, right? Whereas the other words in the sentence are the ones that have all of the meaning. So the glue words in this sentence are there to stick together the meaning words. But obviously, it's ridiculous that out of 19 words, 63% of those words are effectively meaningless. So the idea is that we can then improve the sentence by reducing the number of glue words and focusing on the meaning words. And what I find is that often you can actually look at the sentence and go, I can get rid of half of this sentence and still keep the meaning. For me, there's two different approaches you can take to fixing these glue words. And I think my personal favorite is to just delete the whole sentence and then write down the meaning words again. And then try and connect them with as few different as few glue words as I can. Or you can just go for kind of a complete rewrite approach. And again, I think sticky sentence is something that it takes a little bit to learn, but once you figure it out, then your writing really starts to benefit. And for me, it was interesting. I think I learned this when I was writing research, and we had a lot of space constraints. So things had to fit perfectly in a certain number of words. And so we actually probably spent about twice as long removing words to get it to fit in the right space as we did actually writing the piece in the first place. So it was kind of a weird exercise in reducing words, but actually I think it was incredibly useful for my writing. And again, if you click on here, you'll get some details. And I think the full article for this one is really useful and goes into great detail about what is a glue word, why glue words create sticky sentences, and then I think really usefully has some examples of sticky sentences and how you might then go about rewriting them. I think there's no right or wrong way of rewriting a sticky sentence. And there's often many different ways of rewriting them. But you can see you can get from a glue index of 66% down to 33%, 50 to 22. So you over halving the number of glue words. And if you think of glue words as meaningless words within your text, then you're cutting in half the number of meaningless words that your reader has to read in order to understand what they're reading. And so that's saving your reader a huge amount of time so that they can appreciate your writing more and read it faster and understand what you're saying faster.
Just quickly.
Sorry?
Yeah, just quickly, I was going to say, I saw some people commenting on worrying about changing the context or the content of what they're saying. And I think the sticky sentences report is a great example of how working with an editing tool like ProWritingAid is not going to take away the context or the content of what you're saying, because with something like the sticky sentences report, you have final control over how you rewrite this. So they're just like Chris was saying, there's not just one specific way to do it. So you have the agency as the writer to go in and decide, what are those meat and potatoes words, the important words? What am I trying to say? How can I rearrange this in a way that still, has integrity to my voice and what I'm trying to say, and is not just creating this kind of carbon copy sentence? There's, just as you said, there's hundreds of different ways to rewrite it. So it's not going to just say, this is the right way. There are many right ways. And that's where you as the author can have some control over what you want it to say.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for me, it's interesting, right? Because I think every writer will write sticky sentences during the writing process and then use the editing process to reduce those. For me, there's creating a great piece of writing, there's two different phases. There's the writing phase, which is where you're taking all of the materials that you need for your piece of writing, which are the words, and you're just piling them all up. It's a flow state, it's creative, you're getting your ideas down the page, you don't want interruptions, you just write, and you shouldn't actually care about editing. And you shouldn't care about whether it's a sticky sentence or not. At that point, you shouldn't care whether you're using adverbs. You shouldn't care whether you're using the passive voice. Just get your ideas down. And then the second phase, which is the editing phase, where you come back and you take all of those words, the raw materials that you've piled up, and then you build them into a fantastic piece of writing. And that's the second phase, and that's where you then you're chopping away the fat. I always think when people are talking, you tend to use lots more words than you need to, because you need to give your brain time to catch up with your mouth. Right? Most people can't think that quickly, so they need to add in lots of extra words as they're talking so that their brain has time to process it. And then when you're writing, you tend to do exactly the same. But in writing, you then have this amazing opportunity to go back and edit what you wrote, to cut away all of that, and to create more engaging writing. The same way that a speech writer, a speech is compelling and motivating because the writer has cut away all of those glue words that you would have when you were just having a conversation with somebody, and they get down to the real core of the content. So I think, don't be afraid. Everybody creates glue words. Everyone uses adverbs when they're writing their first draft, but you have to learn to enjoy that editing phase, which is when you go back and you take that unpolished diamond of your work, and you turn it into a beautiful gem. So that is, we've got 15 minutes left. I'll just show, what did I say, the Thesaurus Report?
Yeah, Thesaurus,
yeah.
Yep.
I'll do the repeats first, because I think you mentioned this earlier, Hayley, didn't you?
Yes, it's my bad habit.
Yeah, so I think it's everyone's bad habit, and you can sometimes find, frequent like 30-word phrases where you copy and pasted things and put it in twice. But you also find, certain phrases that you use or overuse all of the time. So you see, for instance, this time of day is in there twice, at this time. So you can start to see your bad habits as a writer emerging in these phrases, and everyone has phrases that they overuse. I can guarantee you that every single writer in the entire world has some phrase that they overuse, and this is the way to find it. So it's a very, very useful tool to run, and I think it's also very difficult to spot it yourself, because once a phrase is activated in your mind, then when you see it again, you don't think twice about it. But for the reader, right, when they see the same phrase over and over again, it really detracts from the writing. So again, it's that being able to see it through the reader's eyes, the lens of the reader, that the tool is trying to do. And there's two reports for that. There's the repeats, which looks at the whole text, and then one called echoes, and echoes, it looks for the same phrases that are repeated within a short space of each other, because that, again, it creates what we call an echo, right? Yeah, so it's interesting here, like this dream and dreams. You might not even see that as the writer, but as the reader, you might go, oh, that's why I've used the same word effectively in the end of one sentence and the beginning of the first. So often you'll find things through this and you're like, oh yeah, I've used exactly the same phrase twice within the space of 30 words. Now, I've even seen where I've used the same 4-word phrase at the beginning of the sentence and at the end of the sentence, because I moved it from the beginning to the end, but I forgot to delete it. So then I used it twice in the same sentence, and it was a bit silly. And then the Thesaurus Report, which I think for me is one of the most useful. So again, when you're writing, you're just trying to get down the first word that has the general meaning of what you want to say. And that's great, that's fine, you're getting your ideas down, you're in this flow state, you don't want to find the perfect word. But then in the editing phase, that's your opportunity to go back and revisit and find the perfect word, the nuanced word that means exactly what you want to do. And that's why a lot of writers love using a thesaurus, right? They go through this process of, right, okay, what synonyms are there of this word that has a more precise meaning? And what we do with the Thesaurus Report is we just automate or make that process a lot faster. So we go through and we look at every verb, noun, adverb, and adjective within your text. And then we look at all of the potential synonyms, and then we look at the context around it, so the surrounding words and phrases, and we try and fit only the words and phrases that match the context, so you don't have to look at synonyms that don't make sense. And then we present them to you, right, in a list, and you can go through and go, actually I'd prefer, just for a minute, or ignored. I like that. You can go through and quickly play with the language to find words that better fit what you actually meant, but it might have a more nuanced meaning, and it just makes that whole process so much faster of improving your document, rather than having to go through and look it up in a thesaurus and then eliminate lots of ones that wouldn't fit into context anyway. So for me, I think we did an analysis, and the Thesaurus Report by people that used it was one of the most used reports, but it was kind of like the undiscovered gem within the tool. So we've got 12 minutes left. I'll just quickly show you some of the extensions of ProWritingAid, so where you might be able to use it in different places. So for instance, we have an Office add-in. So this is for Microsoft Word for Windows. You can see very similar. We've got here a ProWritingAid tab, and you've got all of the reports along here. You've got your improvements and goals, and you get the highlights, and you get the pop-up here, and you can click on it there. We also have one for Mac for Word, which is slightly different because Mac for Word isn't quite as extensible as Word for Mac isn't quite as extensible as Word for Windows. But again, it will give you all of these goals and the improvements, and you can run all of the reports. We also have it for Google Docs, so you can install ProWritingAid here from the Google Workspace Marketplace, and then it will appear on your add-ins here. But also, we have our browser extension. So this is Chrome, and I've got the ProWritingAid browser extension installed here. And you'll see that because of that, I'm getting all of my grammar highlights within it, right? And all of the suggestions in it, and I can just apply them nice and easily within the tool. So there's nice integration of the real-time checking, and then we have an add-on that you can install, and that will give you access to all of the other ProWritingAid reports and the summary report. The browser extension also works, for instance, in anywhere that you're writing. So you can see I've opened up a tweet here, and I get this little ProWritingAid icon in the corner here, and then as I typing, it starts giving me spelling mistakes, etc. here. So that works in most text areas and editors on the internet. And as I said before, we have it for Chrome, for Firefox, for Safari, and for Microsoft Edge. We also have a desktop application which you can download, which works with Scrivener projects. For those of you who don't know what Scrivener is a word processor that's used by lots of creative writers because it's great for sort of longer form documents. It allows you to structure your documents, and it allows you to store all of your research within the document as well. If you're writing longer documents, I highly recommend Scrivener. I think it makes your life a lot easier. What else? The desktop app also works with OpenOffice, LibreOffice, Final Draft if you're writing scripts as well, Markdown, and various other file formats.
And just quickly, a few people have asked, if you have a ProWritingAid premium subscription, you have access to all of these different integrations, so you don't have to purchase a separate one for desktop app or anything like that. They're all included. And a couple of people have asked about the difference between free and premium as well.
Yeah, so free gives you the web editor and the Chrome extension, and then all of the reports are limited to, I think, 500 words. And with premium, you get unlimited access to all of the extensions, add-ons, and unlimited word usage as well.
Do you want to try to power through a few questions that we have? We've got
let's go for
it. So if we don't get to your questions, please feel free to email us anytime at hello@prowritingaid.com, and our support team is happy to take care of you. Okay, so I don't know if we will get all the way through all 32. So, okay, let's see. Somebody has asked about uh, if they're writing in multiple genres. So if it's like a historical fiction fantasy or something like that, should they run both, or historical fiction with a sci-fi fantasy twist? Should you run a separate report? Should you just run one if you're working across genres?
I think generally you want to stick with the main genre. You'll often find there's not a huge difference. And of course you can choose your favorite author and the genre, and then that gives you two different reference points. But it's also very easy to just switch between the genres and have a look at what the differences are. Maybe we'll add a feature in the future to allow you to choose two comparison genres.
Yeah. See whichever you're doing better in. And just
Yeah, well, it's yeah. Double your chance of being right.
Exactly. So a couple of people have asked about document length. What's the ideal document length? Are there limits on document length, and that type of thing?
I think that's a really good question. I think that comes down to kind of the editing process. So in theory, you can run very large documents in the tool. In practice, you probably don't want to, because A, it will take a lot of time, and B, you're not realistically going to edit a 100,000 word document in an afternoon. You have to think, okay, what's the amount of text that I'm going to edit in this session, and then work on that. So for most people, that that's like a chapter or two chapters, or a few thousand words. So yeah, it's less what can I, and more what should I.
Yes, I always say please don't ever try to edit 100,000 words at once. That would be quite miserable. And I think to that point too, you can really make the editing process what you want it to be. So I tend to have the real-time checker on if I'm writing a blog post or an email or something that's a little bit shorter. Whereas when I'm working on fiction projects, I typically have it off until I'm ready to go to the editing process, because my ego can't take the underlines as I'm going through. So there's a lot of opportunity for kind of customization of how you use ProWritingAid throughout all of your different types of writing. Okay, a couple people have asked about mobile app. So no mobile app currently, no mobile app right now. Do you have anything to add?
You can use the web editor on mobile, on iPad and Android.
Okay, some people have asked about using this in an educational context. So do any schools or exam markers use programs like this? And I think there's some other just questions generally about the plagiarism checker and how that works as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think there's lots of teachers that use the product, and lots of students who use it as well to improve their writing. So again, we have specific settings for different academic essays. So we have academic essay, for instance, book review, compare and contrast essays, critiques. You can definitely use it for academic writing, and you will definitely improve your writing. And I think for teachers it's great, right, because they can go through and see all of the grammar mistakes immediately. It really focuses you on the important things, and teachers, when they're going through, they're grading your text using what's called a rubric, which is kind of saying is the user using transitions to join their sentences together? Right, okay, well, ProWritingAid has got transitions report, which shows you exactly that. Has the writer used varied sentence lengths? Well, you've got the sentence variety report for that. Have they used different sentence structures? There's a structure report for that. So all of the things that your teachers are looking for, there's a report in ProWritingAid that shows you those, and the goals in the sidebar are helping you to understand exactly what the teachers are looking for in a great essay, so that you can then achieve that. And at the end of the day, the key to an effective document, whether it's an essay or a cover letter or a job description, is that it meets the expectations of the reader and they enjoy it, right? So that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to show you what they're looking for. So yes, definitely it's very useful for academic writing.
Yes. A couple more questions we'll try to get in. So Dorothy asks, what's the ideal readability grade level that fiction writers should strive for? And this definitely changes depending on what specific genre of fiction you're writing. So if you're in young adult or if you're in kidlit or something like that, the range will be very different. But that's partially why kind of the ranges change here as you switch your genre. But I think I typically say that it's around 7th grade is like the mass market fiction, but that being said, it is a range here. So you'll see that the green kind of tick mark is within a range over there on the left. It's not just one or the other.
So you can see, the range shows you, right here, for instance, we suggest a score less than 9. I think historical fiction is probably a bit higher than, for instance, if I chose like fantasy, I can't remember exactly what all of them are, but so you can see fantasy is saying score less than 8. So again, we benchmarked against great examples from all of the different genres, and then we changed the range that we suggest based on that. So it is very worthwhile choosing the genre that best fits what you're writing.
All right, and I think our final question, we've had a few people ask about getting errors flagged within dialogue. So if there are sticky sentences within dialogue, if a character is using jargon or speaking in broken English or something like that, what can be done in that instance?
It's a good question. I think, well, one of the things is that actually sticky sentences in dialogue, do you actually really need them? I mean, some people say, okay, well, I'm trying to recreate what the speaker is talking like. But actually, I think you can often still not make it a sticky sentence and it be effective. I think grammar mistakes is a tricky one, because sometimes you want to check for grammar mistakes in dialogue, but sometimes you have characters that speak with particular grammatical tics. Obviously, that's where I think the ignore feature comes in. If there is a grammar mistake in dialogue, just click ignore on it and then it will go away and you'll never have to worry about it again.
Great. Well, we still have a number of questions. So again, if you have more to ask us, please feel free to email hello@prowritingaid.com, and our lovely support team will take great care of you. Thank you all so much for joining us. We will send out a replay of this tomorrow. So if you had to step away, or if you just want to watch it again, you are more than welcome to. Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you everyone for joining.
Thanks a lot. It's fun.
Yeah. Have a great
Hopefully see you all in our Facebook community soon.
Yes. Oh, and don't forget, if you haven't upgraded yet, that we have a 25% off sale going on for 2 more days. So please take advantage of that if you have not. See you. Bye, everyone.